So we're working with the wise effort. I was thinking about it when Susan sent me an email about the focus. I was thinking about it, and we'll get into wise effort some more. But what I think is helpful is to compare energy and wise effort because I think we tend to conflate the two. I know I did in my practice. And what I'm discovering about effort, or what I'm discovering about energy and its difference and how it's different from effort, is that energy to me feels like this sustained interest in the present moment that gives me energy. Um, from Tom to everyone, no sound. So, can everyone hear me? Okay. I'm sorry, Tom. It looks like the sound's working for majority of people. And I wish I was savvy enough with Zoom that I could help you, but I can't. I'm sorry. Um, so it was just wanting to make this distinction between energy and effort because for a long time I feel like I was really confused about those things. Okay, good, Tom. I'm glad you got sound. Um, with energy, it for me it's a sustained interest in my present moment experience. So this wholehearted interest that gives me the energy for the practice, just pouring all the energy into the practice. Whereas effort or wise effort, we're really moving into the art of meditation. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we start to discover what are the conditions that lead to awakening, that lead to nibbana, and then what are the conditions that lead away, right? And in Venerable Analayo's approach to Satipatthana practice, so establishing mindfulness, summoning mindfulness, developing it, and strengthening it. And this fourth foundation of establishing mindfulness, the concern is diminishing or what's called starving the hindrances or what's unwholesome, the unwholesome qualities in the heart mind. I like to think of them as unskillful because unwholesome can feel like it has some judgment in it. So it's starving the unskillful, meaning that there are ways that we use our attention, and there are ways that we practice that can nourish what's unskillful or diminish what's unskillful. So I love the language of starving. We're just not giving our energy to the unskillful in unconscious ways. And then this in this fourth establishment of summoning and cultivating mindfulness, we're concerned with what are the states of mind that lead to the nourishment of the awakening factors. Right? And you can think of the awakening factors as wholesome mind states or skillful mind states that, when they're in balance, help us to make the breakthrough to various stages of awakening. So, with wise effort, we're actually learning like, okay, what are the conditions that actually lead to what's skillful? What are the conditions that diminish the unskillful? So that the way that the suttas talk about the unskillful or the unwholesome side of what it is that we're wanting to diminish, that we're wanting to starve, talks about the unskillful that's arisen, to abandon it, which is, there are different ways that you can do that. And then for the unskillful that has not arisen, it's such a mouthful. The unskillful that has not arisen, preventing it from arising. which is kind of fast. It's like, well, how do I prevent the unskillful from arising? And we can use the faculty of our attention, a wise attention. Like in any moment, just starting to notice, like, where's my attention? What am I attending to in any given moment? And am I attending to those things that result in anger? That it's more likely that impatience will arise. So one of the real supports for us in preventing that unwholesome from arising is mindfulness. In the suttas talk about mindfulness as a protection for the heart and mind. Right? In fact, there's this phrase called sense restraint, which it's such an unfortunate phrase. And it's simply just making sure or summoning mindfulness so that it's at each of the sense gates. And we just start to notice when the mind starts to proliferate in ways that are that'll lead to unskillful actions arising, unskillful movements of the heart and mind. So mindfulness is a wonderful support in helping to prevent the arising of unskillful, unwholesome movements of the heart mind. And then when the unskillful is actually arisen in the heart and mind, which it will do, because that's what human hearts do, and it's no fault of our own. I've noticed that when there's reactivity in my own heart and mind, at the bottom of it is just this wish to be safe and healthy, and for my loved ones to be safe and healthy. It's just such an innocent movement of the heart. So that when we see the unwholesome or reactivity arising in our heart and mind, we don't actually have to berate ourselves. We don't need to be in contention with ourselves. We can just see, like, oh, this is just an innocent movement of my own heart and mind. And it's really coming from ignorance, not quite understanding how to skillfully meet the needs that I need, to skillfully meet my needs of safety, of health. There's just some confusion there. So when we see the reactivity, we don't need to make an enemy of it. And what's delightful about that is when we don't make an enemy of it, we can actually relate to it in a way that helps it to become a gateway to freedom, right? So when it arises, we want to bring in things that help us abandon the reactivity in the heart and mind, that help us abandon the unskillful. And this is going to sound so simple, but it's really bringing in this third establishment of mindfulness, this capacity to just be mindful of and know when an unskillful reactive mind state is present. And in doing that, we're widening and deepening our capacity to actually be with these reactive mind states, these unskillful mind states, and sometimes just bringing mindfulness to it, especially when it's in its incipient stage. That's enough for the reactivity in the heart or the unskillful to just abate really quickly. Sometimes it's just mindfulness. That's all that's needed. If it's a little stronger, it can be helpful just to check the attitude. What's my attitude towards this unskillful state? If there's aversion, we just make space for the reactivity, the unskillful state, whether it's sensual desire or restlessness or worry, and the aversion toward it. And we just make space, breathe into that, we know it. And in that process of bringing mindfulness to the unskillful, the reactive, and our attitude toward it, we're gathering information about the unwholesome mind state. We're starting to learn, okay, what were the conditions that actually led to the arising of this? So when we're mindful of the reactivity, we get to know, like, okay, what does it feel like in the body? What are some of the impulses that I want to, what are some of the actions? What are some of the words that I want to say out of this? Making the commitment not to. So summoning patience, right? Okay, here's this anger. I want to say this. I want to do that. I'm not going to. I'm making a commitment not to cause harm. Oh, this is what anger feels like in the body. And then the next step is to start to look at what are the conditions that led to this. Oh yeah, my attention, my mindfulness disappeared. My attention landed on this situation with my family. All this anger arose. Then you start to get to see the cause and effect, the conditionality. What are the circumstances and conditions that give rise to reactivity, the unwholesome, the unskillful? And again, we want to bring like a real sustained interest in this. I remember one time I was at work when I was working at Spirit Rock. It's a beautiful day. I was walking, and there was no mindfulness. My mind had wandered. My attention had landed on some situation, and I could see all this reactivity arising in my heart and mind that I wasn't aware of. And then mindfulness returned. I said, I almost shouted it out loud. I was like, sweetie, you're suffering. You're suffering. And it was so great because it was such a change in attitude from what I had experienced before when reactivity would arise. I'd be so identified with it. But the practice had supported me in relating to the reactivity in a way where I wasn't so identified. And there was interest and excitement about the presence of the reactivity, right? It's delightful. And when there's interest, you can bring as much curiosity as you can to it. Start to see, like, okay, what does this feel like in the body? What are the conditions? And then when we have a better understanding of the conditions that have led to the arising of the reactivity, we can start to play with letting it go. Seeing like, oh, there was a lack of mindfulness. My attention was with the situation with my family. Sometimes it's helpful just to connect with your deepest values. Like, okay, the situation with my family. How do I want to engage with this from my deepest values? That can help us to let go of reactivity. And there are what are called antidotes in working with these unwholesome mind states. Maybe we'll have a chance to explore them another time.